Hello, Dr. Childers here. Talking with my professional colleagues about um, professional competence, standards of practice, risk management issues, and the shifting field in um, assessing, diagnosing attachment-related pathology surrounding divorce, in which standards of practice and standards for professional competence are coming to the field because we are defining the pathology using standard and established psychological constructs and principles, and so which then leads to the domains of knowledge necessary, and then the assessment part regarding those domains of knowledge. Now, I've talked about the potential for licensing board complaints and the five basic areas that those are going to cover. The two main areas is violation of 2.01a, professional competence, that then leads to a violation of 9.01a regarding an assessment sufficient to substantiate your diagnostic or forensic testimony. Then the secondary kinds of features that grow off of that, or violations that grow off of that, is a violation of 3.04 because you didn't know what you're doing, there was harm to the client, violation of or a failure in the duty to protect because you didn't know what you're doing, you failed to diagnose the child's psychological abuse in the family, you didn't conduct a proper assessment for that because you didn't know what you're doing. And then a violation to 2.03 that you were offered information to improve your professional knowledge and competence consistent with the 2.03, and you rejected that. You turned that away. You put up barriers to acquiring professional competence. So those are going to be the set of violations that are going to be a part of that complaint against incompetent mental health professionals. But I want to also address the issue that licensing board complaints don't cost anything, and so they're low barrier to targeted parents, and it is appropriate to address these issues with the licensing board and get that addressed through them. In addition, though, violations of professional practice standards regarding professional competence could well represent malpractice. And I'm not an attorney. I'm a clinical psychologist, family therapist to family therapist. Here's potentially what could happen is instead of, or in addition to, filing licensing board complaints, some of these parents may go the route of filing a malpractice lawsuit. Now that costs them money. They're going to have to get an attorney and stuff, and so there's a bit of a financial barrier to that. But if they file a malpractice lawsuit, it is possible that they may look to me to be a consultant on that case, to talk about the necessary domains of professional competence, to talk about the assessment of pathology, all the stuff back in that conversation stuff, those 7 videos on, or actually 9 videos with the 4.01a and 4.01 and 4.02. Those videos, the attorney may look to me as a consultant on those. So I may be getting your treatment notes, your assessment notes, your assessment protocol, and looking at that and doing an analysis of that and writing 20-page, 50-page report based on looking at your assessment of this pathology relative to issues surrounding professional competence, knowledge base. Did you do an adequate assessment of attachment-related pathology, personality pathology in this family, and so on? So in that a malpractice lawsuit, the attorney who is examining you on the stand as part of that may have benefit of all of my knowledge and expertise to impeach your treatment, your assessment, to document and for the court the inadequacy of your assessment and the inadequacy of your background in attachment pathology and personality pathology and so on and so forth. Now, if you don't mind that, if that's okay with you, that you're facing a malpractice lawsuit in which Dr. Childress is going over your assessment notes and your treatment notes and providing a 50-page analysis of your assessment and treatment plan and the whole bit, that's okay with you. Okay. Because that's potentially what could be moving towards with the targeted parents. The issue for me is not about causing harm to my professional colleagues. It is about ensuring and establishing standards of professional competence and standard of professional practice for targeted parents and their children. So, if you, let's say there's a licensing board complaint, licensing board doesn't do anything. Great, good for you. The next family comes along, you do the same thing, and you get a. Why not just acquire the professional knowledge about the attachment system, personality pathology, family system stuff, and do an adequate assessment and document it? Just shift over. 4.01 and 4.02 on the previous series, Conversation with Dr. Childress, talk about how you differentially diagnose pathogenic parenting and document that. If you differentially diagnose and just document, you're fine, you're good. There's no licensing board complaint. You've documented, you took the information from the client, you've documented the symptoms, and then you've moved on into your treatment plan based on the assessment protocol. No problem, piece of cake. Just do that, and that's a risk management issue. And that's part of what foundations and the assessment protocol are providing you, is a way of establishing your professional competence and your assessment. So on my website as well, there's a 40-page reference list. That's my personal reference list regarding this pathology. And so you'll see Bowlby and Milan and Kernberg and Nuchin and Haley and Linehan. You'll see all the books and material from them, but also a whole bunch of research studies about the linking the personality pathology to the attachment system, and so in complex trauma and a number of different research studies, scientific foundation to the pathology. And so there's 40 pages, and a lot of it's quotes. So I've pulled out the quotes that are relevant because that's what I use as this is my personal reference list. So I have all these quotes available and I can use them at a moment. I have read everything in that reference list. In order to be professionally competent, you should read everything in that reference list. In fact, a little bit more. In the attachment system, you should know about disorganized attachment. And there's a little bit in there about Lyons Ruth on that. In personality pathology, you really need to understand. You need to have read Milan. You need to have read Kernberg and Linehan. And so that's just sort of basic competence. If you have not read that, if you don't have a background in working with attachment pathology, if you don't have a background in working with personality pathology or family systems therapy that incorporates personality pathology, you shouldn't be working with this population, bottom line, until you acquire that knowledge. What Foundations does for you is it pulls all of that information together in one place. So you can get up to speed quickly on this. And so I don't want to bring the whole field to a halt while we get professional competence. So we have to work with where we're at. But Foundations brings all the information together in a cohesive, coherent package, describes the pathology from top to bottom. It takes that 40 pages of references and integrates them into a description of the pathology that describes the pathology across three levels: the family systems level, the personality disorder level, and the attachment level, as well as integrates all three levels so that the attachment pathology creates the personality pathology, which then creates the family systems. So it's integrated both across levels, but also integrated across all three levels as well. So that's what Foundation provides you. It provides you a get up to speed quickly kind of movement through. The protocol for assessing the parenting, the documentation protocol for assessing the pathogenic parenting of the targeted rejected parent or potential pathogenic parenting through the parenting practices rating scale, or assessing the potential pathogenic parenting by the allied and supposedly favored parent through the parenting practices or through the diagnostic checklist for pathogenic parenting. Those two documentation instruments are a way for you to demonstrate that you've assessed and documented the pathology consistent with 9.01a. I don't care what you find. So as we go back to the other line there about differential diagnosis and professional standards of practice, in differential diagnosis, we don't care where it leads. That's not the issue. We're just going to put up the different alternatives and go wherever the data winds up going. If it goes to pathogenic parenting by the targeted parent, well, that's what we're looking at. If it goes to pathogenic parenting by the allied parent and cross-generational coalition, well, then that's where the data is going. If it goes autism, it goes autism. If it goes, no matter where it goes, we're going to follow the information. So those two instruments are simply a way of documenting that you've done an adequate assessment consistent with 9.01a. We're not out to hurt people. We don't want to hurt you. I'm a clinical psychologist, got a family. I don't want licensing board complaints against me. I don't want, malpractice suits against me. I don't want them against you. At the same time, targeted parents and their children have a legal right, they have a professional right to expect professional competence from mental health professionals. In what we know, not to practice beyond the boundaries of our competence, and in what we do to properly assess pathology sufficient to document or sufficient to substantiate our diagnostic and forensic testimony. So, one of the things that is going to be happening here with targeted parents, and I just want to alert you as to the steps that are going to be moving through, is first the targeted rejected parent is going to bring you information and present you with information and ask you to assess for the information. Step one. And then they're going to document that in a letter to you, a letter to a stranger it's called. And so they're going to document that they provided you with this information and that they're asking you to incorporate it into your assessment and diagnosis. If you reject that, if you just say, no, leave me alone, I've been doing this for 25 years, I'm not doing anything, then the parent is going to document that you have refused to integrate the information. So you're going to get another letter documenting that. And what they're doing is they're laying the paper trail for the licensing board complaint. And then, if they're still unresponsive, they're going to write to the APA Ethics Committee, see if they can get a letter out of the APA Ethics Committee or Board of Psychology saying, what do I do if I think there's been a violation of 2.01a and 9.01a and 3.04 and 2.03 and duty to protect. They're not going to discuss the specifics of the case. That's not relevant. It's the violations of the standards that are relevant. So they're going to just say, what should I do if I think there's these violations of the standards? They're going to get a letter back from the APA Ethics Committee or from the licensing board saying, well, if you're concerned, if you're a client that's concerned, then file a licensing board complaint. So then they're going to include that letter, the other two letters to the licensing board complaint with identifying the two main complaints, violation of 2.01a, violation of 9.01a, and the three additional complaints, failure in duty to protect, failure 2.03 regarding maintaining competence, and failure of 3.04 or violation of 3.04 causing harm to the client. And licensing board may not do anything this time, but if you continue to do the same stuff, you're going to continue to face this over and over and over again from parents. And so I just want you to be aware of the changes that are taking place and to be able to adjust your risk management response to just incorporate that, so you're not facing any risk. When the parent brings you information, just incorporate it. And you should be looking at, anyway, you should be doing this just on your own, looking at the attachment pathology and learning about the attachment system and things. And doing the proper assessment, parenting practices, rating scale, diagnostic checklist, document it. You'll be safe. You'll be fine. There's nothing that once you do that, the targeted parent doesn't have grounds, because you've read foundations, you're knowledgeable about the field, and you've done the assessment protocol, 9.01a. There's no grounds. So that's my recommendation. That's my hope. I do not want to harm mental health professionals. I don't want to create problems for you in your life. What I care about, is that we have a case of child psychological abuse confirmed. This pathology is a DSM-5 diagnosis of child psychological abuse. And it is incumbent upon us as mental health professionals to do an appropriate assessment, to have the appropriate knowledge, and to protect children under our duty to protect from psychological child abuse by a narcissistic borderline parent who's psychologically collapsing in response to the inherent rejection and abandonment of the divorce. So we are bringing professional competence to the field of professional psychology, and we are bringing standards of practice to the field of professional psychology. All of this is open to negotiation and dialogue as we move forward. What's not open to negotiation and dialogue is the requirement under Standard 2.01a for professional competence, and the requirement under 9.01a for an appropriate assessment sufficient to substantiate our diagnostic statements and our forensic testimony.